following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hi, this is Jeff Shapiro, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Niagara Falls Review, the March 17th, 2026 issue of the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. So Ralph Berger's family delivers petition for 911 dispatch reform. Fonthill man's call for help unanswered in 2024. After gathering 1,420 signatures in a little more than 7 days, the family of Ralph Berger has officially brought their fight for emergency services reform to the provincial level. Siblings Rick Berger, Sylvia Fuchs, and Christine Stark canvassed neighborhoods and would deliver the completed petition to Niagara Centre MPP Jeff Birch last week. The document asked the provincial government to mandate the use of noise-canceling headphones for 911 operators, including Niagara Regional Police, and require the staff to undergo periodic hearing tests following their initial hire. In Ralph's memory, it's crucial that steps are taken to prevent similar tragedies. Enhancing the hearing capabilities of call takers could significantly improve emergency response outcomes, said the petition letter. Let's ensure that no other family has to endure what ours did, losing a loved one when help was right there but unheard. In the early hours of August 30th, 2024, 59-year-old Ralph called 911 but was unable to speak. Although the Niagara 911 dispatcher pinged his Fonthill location, the 35-second call was classified as a silent call, and no emergency responders were sent. Police said that the dispatcher did not hear Ralph's rhythmic breathing or the sound of what appeared to be him falling to the floor. Audio, the family said, they identified after obtaining a copy of the call through Freedom of Information requests. In a meeting last summer, Niagara Police Chief Bill Forty and other officials cited high call volume, dispatch center noise levels, and technical limitations, including single-sided, non-noise canceling headsets, as challenges for operators. While hearing tests are required upon hiring, police said the policy does not mandate follow-up evaluations. The family initially sought policy changes through the Niagara Regional Police Services Board, but the board declined to hear the deputation while the matter remains under investigation by Ontario's Inspectorate of Policing. The family has shifted to provincial channels to advocate for standardized audio equipment and hearing screenings so that what happened to Ralph doesn't happen to anyone else. I thought there must be another way, and that's when I found out about doing a petition, said Rick Berger. You don't need anywhere near that number of signatures for a petition. We just wanted to get as much as possible. Provincial petitions require at least one original, handwritten signature and address from an Ontario resident and are submitted to the legislature through a member of provincial parliament. Everybody's under the belief that if you call 911 and even if you don't say anything, it hangs up and nobody answers. They will send someone to you. Everybody is under that belief, said Berger. In reality, from the meeting I had with police last summer, they don't do that. In an interview Wednesday, Birch said that MPPs are often presented with petitions that they do not sign all of them. He chose to sign this one, which he expects to present when the legislature reopens later this month, because everyone is troubled by what happened. It's something that the government should take a look at and consider if this is a best practice to implement across the province and makes people safe and avoids tragedies like what happened to the Berger family, he said. Birch said that, like the family, he assumed emergency services were always dispatched to a determined location if a caller was unable to speak or in a situation requiring silence. He was surprised to learn that is not always the case. While the petition itself does not address all the concerns surrounding Ralph's death, Birch said it was a good starting point. Obviously, we want to make sure it does happen, both with policies and procedures and making sure that they have the resources, whether it's appropriate number of officers or technology like noise-canceling headphones, he said. We want to make sure we do everything possible to ensure that someone who does call 911 and they're in trouble, that there's always a response. Birch added the public needs to know whether emergency services are meeting their mandates and how often such calls are falling through the cracks. Bringing this to the legislature shines a light on what are the provincial standards and where does Niagara stack up in comparison to best practices across the province, he said. I think it's a matter of public safety, so this petition is a tool to start that conversation and make sure that the Niagara region has the resources that are necessary to do the job properly. He hopes it would not only make the system safer, but give the Berger family some closure. I think it helps them to deal with the tragedy, knowing that they're trying to do something to ensure it doesn't happen to other families, said Birch. I really commend the family for trying to improve the system. We'll see more people dying in city parks. Fear of more overdoses rises with coming treatment site closure. It's being called a step backwards that will lead to more overdose deaths and further stress hospital emergency medical services after the Ontario government confirmed Monday that it will be pulling funding from all drug consumption and treatment sites across the province. Positive Living Niagara, which operates Niagara's only consumption and treatment site, known as CTS, has received word that its funding will end June 13th, as it will for the other 6 sites, 2 each in Toronto and Ottawa, 1 each in London and Peterborough. We're incredibly disappointed by Friday's announcement, said Talia Storm, Positive Living's director of Streetworks. We are deeply concerned about what this means for our community. We've seen the impact of closures in other communities. In February, Hamilton had 199 opioid-related calls for paramedics, shattering the previous record of 143 set the month prior, The Spectator reported. Since opening in 2018, the St. Catharines CTS has reversed 1,520 overdoses and recorded more than 89,000 visits. It also connected people to external services and interventions and alleviated pressures on Niagara Emergency Medical Services paramedics. Niagara EMS said in an email that 1 paramedic is stationed at CTS 7 days a week and the position will be folded back into the overall EMS schedule once it closes. Our hearts are broken. The space is about consumption, but it's also about connection to so many other resources, Storm said. It's about providing dignity and care and building relationships with the prevention of things like HIV and hepatitis C and overdose. Instances of blood-borne infections are expected to surge following the closure of consumption sites in communities such as St. Catharines, said lawyer at HIV Legal Network co-executive director Sandra Ka-Han-Chu. We can absolutely expect that these numbers to go up because we know that these sites are not just about preventing overdose deaths, she said. While that's important, they're also hubs of community care and provide sterile injection equipment. We know that they're proven to reduce the risk of blood-borne infections. Ka-Han-Chu said that the move to defund CTS by the Doug Ford government is grounds for a constitutional challenge. There's a case that went to Supreme Court of Canada more than a decade ago called Insight, the PHS decision. And there, the Supreme Court of Canada confirmed access to supervised consumption service is a form of health care, she said. Taking this away when we know that we're in an unprecedented toxic drug crisis is a denial, we believe, of the right to health and the right to security of the person, which is protected under our charter. St. Catherine's New Democrat MPP Jenny Stevens condemned the province's actions. This government held a last-minute meeting with no warning and pulled the rug right out from under the frontline health workers at the CTS site, she said. Stevens called it very reckless and deeply irresponsible to give St. Catherine's CTS only 90 days to wind down life-saving services with no alternative. It's going to impact our community very, very bad, she said. This gives people a safe place, and it does prevent overdoses on our streets. We must really remember that it makes it more dangerous when we cut that support off. Stevens worries that the beleaguered healthcare system will be impacted. Closing a CTS site that has reversed over 1,500 overdoses definitely isn't solving the crisis, she said. It's pushing it onto our streets and into our emergency rooms. It's imperative that we have these sites. Maritime Council Greg Miller said the St. Catherine's will see more people who use drugs using them less safely and more publicly due to the closure. We're going to see those impacts on city streets and parks as people potentially overdose or aren't getting the help that they need, he said. There's an opioid crisis and a poverty crisis happening, and it's going to become more apparent without the consumption and treatment site, he said. He said he was going to look into whether the funding the province is taking away can be replaced. Miller's biggest concern with losing the CTS is loss of life. We'll see more people dying in city parks and on private property from using drugs unsafely, he said. Should council attend meetings in person? Thorold's Jim Handley has been participating virtually from the Caribbean for months. Is it time for Thorold to rethink its hybrid work model, particularly for city councilors? That question has been debated through several motions in the post-COVID-19 era. Most recently, a motion introduced last year by Council Anthony Longo sought to return council to in-person meetings while limiting electronic participation, specifically to allow for better communication, collaboration, decision-making, and accessibility for the public. Should retired Brock University political science professor David Siegel, the function of counselors getting together, sharing information, that's always been an important part of the consultation process. Getting together is significant because that's a good time when residents and businesses can come to the council and make their case about particular issues. Most of Niagara's 13 municipalities, including the region, allow hybrid work for staff and counselors. Siegel said that to continue remote access beyond a few very specific situations no longer makes any sense. Longo's motion proposed counselors could miss a regular in-person meeting or attend via Zoom by providing advance notice for disability, illness of self or a family member, work commitments, or inclement weather. Thorold's procedural bylaw prescribes a sitting city councilor can miss a maximum of 3 consecutive meetings without explanation. Amendments made during the pandemic allowed councilors to attend electronically and for remote attendance to count towards a quorum. Longo's motion was defeated last year, at which time Councilor Jim Handley took offense to it, saying that the council was targeting him. Handley was vacationing in the Dominican Republic at the time. I'm the only counselor that has been in fact practicing that, Handley said, of online participation in meetings. Considering the fact that we allow workers in Thorold, the hybrid model for employment, you're going to stop a counselor from doing it unless he has a reason. Longo denied that he was targeting Handley. The Standard reviewed roll calls of Thorold City Council meetings posted on YouTube and determined that between January 2024 and February 2026, Handley attended about 44% of regularly scheduled meetings in person and the other 56% remotely. This year, Hanley has been in the Dominican Republic since December and has participated in council meetings entirely through electronic means. But the councilor has taken a different view of city employees who work from home. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. During a 2023 council meeting, Hanley voted against the employee hybrid work policy. At the time, he said staff would take advantage of the opportunity, calling it a rotating crisis for the city. How are we going to monitor the individuals who are actually working at home for a specific period of time, he asked. I have concerns, and I won't support the policy. Robin Brock, a former Thorold mayor, said Hanley's ongoing absences are concerning, as constituents lack access to someone who should be addressing issues and advocating for them. Councilors belong in the council chambers, and they belong in the community where the citizens are, she said. It's very difficult. A councilor who's not in the country for 4 months isn't here to witness the issues that citizens of Thorold are dealing with, like snow removal or a sidewalk clearing, water problems, or parking issues. Posts on Hanley's Facebook page indicate that he's been in the Dominican Republic since about December 1st and is still there. Hanley, in an email, said nothing restricts constituents from contacting him. I have wide open phone, internet, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Brock said that Hanley may be available via internet and phone, but should be available in person, as that's what a city councilor is being paid for. He's not attending any grand openings. He hasn't attended any community functions that I've attended, except one, for a parking lot issue, she said. Other than that, I haven't seen him at any of them. Thorold councilors receive an annual salary of $20,245 to participate in developing bylaws and budgets, serving on committees, addressing resident issues, and attending council meetings, among other responsibilities. Hanley is the only Thorold councilor not serving on any boards or committees. Siegel said that when councilors do not participate in an at-large system like Thorold, which does not use wards, it creates problems, adding further responsibility for councilors. Speaking in a general sense, and not about Hanley specifically, Siegel said if there's a councilor who's not carrying their weight, that means all the other councilors have to do more work to make up for that person. Hanley, when questioned by a reporter through email about his absence, said he does more for the citizens of Thorold from the Dominican Republic than other councilors do while in Thorold. I mediated a resolution to a long-standing dispute between Rolling Meadows Land Corporation and Rudenko Holdings that the city could not resolve, he wrote. I coordinated delivery of over 240 bags of groceries to residents while in the Dominican Republic. What have any other councilors accomplished that I haven't while being in the Dominican? Hanley said he believes there are more serious initiatives that cities should be concentrating on than whether or not a councilor is representing his constituents or not. Brock said, by not attending council meetings or serving on any committees, Hanley does not interact with the residents advocating for issues in the city. Most recently, Brock said that she attended a council meeting in support of a motion to remove a clause in a bylaw prohibiting burials in unopened sections of Lakeview Cemetery. Councilor Hadley, who attended via Zoom from the Dominican Republic, couldn't see the crowd of people sitting in the council chambers. He was unable to feel the emotion, she said. He was unable to see the eyes of the kids when he was screaming and yelling over the mayor and interrupting the speaker. Siegel agreed that councilors not physically present in their community do not understand what is happening there, be it ward or at large. It's my experience councilors learn a lot by just driving around the municipality, he said. Siegel said this type of leadership sends a message to constituents that they do not matter. If I were in that municipality, I would wonder why I would want to cast a vote for that person, he said. If they're not going to be doing their work as a counselor, then why would I want that person on council? Not only that, he said, without direct reference to Hanley, but a counselor who doesn't carry their weight imposes costs on other counselors and the taxpayer. I'm just a sake crazy guy. Niagara on the Lake's Yoshi Taoka becomes Canada's first master sake sommelier. Tequila may have actors George Clooney and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and television chef Guy Fieri as high-profile influencers taking up the benefits of the Mexican-inspired drink. But master sake sommelier Yoshi Takaoka, restaurant manager for Masaki Sushi in the Niagara-on-the-Lake, was born to teach Canadians about the benefits of sake and Japanese culture. This is my passion, said Takaoka in a recent interview. This is my mission. When he arrived from Japan to Canada in 2005, teaching in Stratford schools, his goal was to not only explain the intricacies of Japanese culture and heritage, but to also educate Canadians about sake, a critical aspect of Japan's history. Takaoka earned various levels of certifications, not unlike someone in Ontario earning certificates about wine tastings, viticulture, and serving. But becoming a master sommelier, a lofty honor only 46 people in the world have earned, eluded him. For years, a grueling 2-day course was held in Europe or Asia, but never in North America. It wasn't until January that the Master Sake Sommelier course was offered in Portland, Oregon. With the support of Lace Hotel Properties, Takaoka, who's 46 years old, jumped at the chance to earn the highest designation for the drink. It was very intense, he said. We needed to know everything about sake techniques and tastings. We had 60 blind tastings starting at 9 a.m. It was tough. The course included etiquette, serving techniques, food pairing, and even the art of buying and selling the drink. I was so nervous, said Takaoka. I received a really high level of experience that I now can share with people. While tequila has seen a boom in popularity, as various sports and entertainment celebrities endorse and even invest in creating their own brands, sake is only now experiencing an upward trend in North America, said Takaoka. It received a huge shout-out through social media when baseball great and Los Angeles player Shohei Ohtani, after winning the World Series over the Toronto Blue Jays last fall, encouraged Dodger fans to really enjoy a really good sake. Sake has also become a beverage Canadians are just getting to know. Japanese Sake and Sochu Maker Association data shows that the volume exported to Canada skyrocketed by 236% from 2011 to 2025, from 472,000 kiloliters to 1.30 million, placing the country comfortably as the 7th highest globally in value and 6th in volume as a destination for exports. Sake has been primarily consumed within Japan, but with little growth, the Japanese Sake Export Council has been promoting the drink overseas. It received a boost in 2013 when the washoku, traditional dietary cultures of the Japanese, was registered on the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage, leading to a proliferation of Japanese restaurants globally and a growth in exports. Takaoka has seen a similar rise in interest locally. When he began working at Masaki Sushi in 2017 as a lead server, the restaurant offered less than 10 different types. Now, he says, customers have a choice of about 80 stored in a specially designed refrigerator. Sake is booming each year, he said. And while he's the master sommelier, the staff at Masaki Sushi are well trained in the ways of sake. The staff have the same passion as me, he said. If it was just me, I couldn't do it all. Sake is created using fermented rice, water, yeast, and mold. Takaoka says that there is as many different sakes made as there are areas in Japan, with each one having a different taste and aroma, depending upon the type of rice, water, and mold that is used and how the fermentation process is manipulated. It is easily understandable to explain sake to a wine person because they are so similar, he said. This is Niagara, the best place to introduce sake. And like wine, there are different flavors, including some that taste fruity, have some more of a umami taste, or white and refreshing varieties with hints of grass or bamboo. But Takaoka is adamant sake does not have to be heated to be enjoyed. The classic sake can be very refreshing, he said. He said the drink can be paired with just about any food, including pasta and even a hamburger. To encourage that interest, Takaoka is hosting Sake Journey Niagara on April 11th at Royal Cambridge Banquet Hall in Prince of Wales Hotel from 1 to 6 p.m. The event will feature curated selections of premium and rare sakes. The goal is to attract about 300 people, he said. Takaoka is also thinking about hosting a Japanese festival similar in theme to the popular Niagara Ice Wine Festival and Peach Festival that attract thousands of people to Queen Street in Niagara-on-the-Lake. The event would educate and celebrate Japanese culture, history, and include, of course, sake. He also hosts various tasty workshops at Masaki Sushi. This is my biggest role, to introduce what is sake to people, he said. I will go anywhere and everywhere to explain what is sake. I'm just a sake crazy guy. The following is from the opinion page. Ford puts stat holidays on the chopping block. After this past Family Day in February, Doug Ford, this is by Margaret Skimba, by the way, Doug Ford floated the idea of doing away with the statutory holiday for retail operations. Apparently, he was surprised by the fact that Home Depot was closed when he needed it open. Duh. Ford said he was inundated with calls from irate shoppers unable to get their consumer fix because the malls were closed. It would be hard to verify that when Ford continues to battle a court decision to turn over his phone records while he continues to conduct government business on his private, personal phone. His constant hyperbole leaves me doubting much of what he says. I'd like to know how many Ontarians are willing to rob low-wage retail workers of the day off when they themselves get to enjoy. I'd like data on just how callous and self-serving some shoppers are, not to mention disorganized, that they can't do on a Saturday or Sunday what they absolutely have to do on a holiday Monday. Will it increase the amount of people who actually spend, or does it just redistribute? If we need something, we'll buy it today, tomorrow, or the next day. Ford claims shopping malls would have been packed with shoppers on Family Day and that low-wage workers would jump at the chance to make extra money working a stat holiday. Maybe, but it's also a sign of how economically desperate things are for them. The solution to the low wages that retail workers get isn't solved by paying them time and a half on a statutory holiday here and there. It's solved by paying workers a living wage, at the least, throughout the entire year. Ford recently announced that his government would be opening up not only Family Day, but Victoria Day, the much-anticipated and near-sacrosanct 2-4 weekend, to retail shopping. It's a crazy upside-down world when the beer premier steals away a holiday quickly named after the 24-bottle case of beer many workers consume while partying at campsites and backyard parties all over the province. Leaving the decision to the deep-pocketed big-box retailers is like turning over the henhouse to the foxes. The larger ones, like Home Depot, could just as easily staff their stores at reduced capacity to make up the time and a half that they're paying those who do work, resulting in these workers having to work more while at work. It's one thing to say that there will be protections for workers who refuse to work, But without a union backing them, there's no limit to the inventive ways that employers can penalize recalcitrant or reluctant workers or coerce them into showing up. You're listening and reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I get it that we've become so accustomed to instant gratification that we get annoyed when the stores are closed because we need to shop. I've been caught off guard myself by a closed store. But it doesn't take much to remember that these workers need time off too, that their low-wage jobs would be doubly penalized by having to work when everyone else is off. It's not about the money, it's about the time. Stat holidays mean very little to me now that I'm retired, except as an opportunity to spend time with family and friends who do still work. But when I did work, I looked forward to every stat holiday on the calendar. People are so busy during the regular work week that finding a time to stop and catch their breath is hard to do. It's a sad day when workers have to choose between the paltry amount that they'll get after taxes for working a stat holiday over the available time spent with family and friends, or just having the time to themselves to do with what they please. To a worker, paid personal time is priceless. It's just another aggressive policy from the progressive conservatives shamefully still enjoying their paid 14-week Christmas break. Again, that's an opinion column from Margaret Skimba. The following is an opinion by the writer Gwyn Dyer, D-Y-E-R. America is losing its climate science. In 1953, Ray Bradbury, an American writer, published a book entitled simply Fahrenheit 451. It was a novel about an American fireman in a not-too-distant future who realized that he was doing his job all wrong because his job was to burn books, which were banned in that future America. 451F is the temperature at which paper catches fire. The book got a lot of attention and won some major prizes because it was the time of the Second Great Red Scare in the United States, anti-communist witch hunts, Senator Joe McCarthy's congressional hearings, and of course book bans. But Bradbury's fireman hero secretly reads the books, learns the truth, and ends up working to preserve knowledge. Just what we need right now, in fact, and the ideal hero for our redemptive tale is Russell Vought, President Donald Trump's director of the Office of Management and Budget. He was a lead author in the Project 2025 plan for transforming the U.S. government into a tool of the hard right, and he urgently needs to be redeemed. Vought's current project is to destroy American climate science, which he regularly refers to as climate alarmism or climate fanaticism. He's taking point in an official drive to break up or close down all the climate-linked scientific institutes that receive federal government money in the United States. If the facts don't suit your politics, just erase them. His primary target is the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR, the jewel in the crown of American climate science. 830 climate scientists and engineers in a purpose-built building in Boulder, Colorado. Since its creation in 1960, to do research projects bigger than any single university could handle, it has certainly fulfilled its promise. This week is the deadline for proposals for the disposal of various parts of this world-famous institute, whose personnel, equipment, and possibly even records will be scattered to the winds. All other government-backed climate research in the United States is also facing destruction. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the world-renowned Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory at Princeton University, NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. They are all on the Trump administration's hit list. It doesn't mean that a couple of thousand American climate scientists will be begging on the streets. The best ones will be snapped up by universities and institutes abroad, especially in Germany, Scandinavia, the United Kingdom, and Australia, where you already tripping over emigre American scientists in the better universities. The younger and more adventurous ones may go farther afield, to big countries such as Brazil, India, Indonesia, and China, where governments are scrambling to build up their climate science communities. The greater loss for the rest of the world is NCAR, the single biggest node for climate research in the world. Only the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany, they have 300 researchers, the Met Office Hadley Center in England, they have 200, and the Climate Change Research Center, which has 300 researchers, of the Institute of Atmospheric Physics in Beijing, even come close. Numbers matter. Critical mass matters too. It's already clear that making it through the next half century without a climate calamity that radically changes the living conditions on this planet will be a near-run thing. The rest of us cannot afford to lose the Americans. In the meantime, somebody give Russell Vought a book that isn't the Bible. He might learn something, even though he is a self-avowed Christian nationalist. The following is an opinion from Nolka Dakru. Gift card, a first step, not a solution. Ontario announced last week that every elementary homeroom teacher will receive a $750 classroom supply card. For years, too many teachers across this province have filled the gap left by tight school budgets by paying out of their own pockets for basic classroom materials. This new program recognizes the simple fact that teachers should not have to personally subsidize the public education system. Beginning in September, each elementary homeroom teacher will have access to $750 annually to purchase classroom materials, such as writing supplies, craft materials, calculators, and other essentials. But while $750 per classroom is a positive change and deserves recognition, it should be seen as a first step rather than a solution. Anyone who has spent time in a classroom knows basic supplies disappear quickly, and the reality is that classrooms need consistent, well-funded supply budgets, not occasional or limited funding announcements. Meanwhile, in recent years, many schools have focused heavily on digital tools and online platforms. Technology certainly has a role to play in modern education, but in the rush towards screens, many schools have quietly reduced the everyday physical materials that make classrooms work. Worksheets, workbooks, printed reading materials, textbooks, agendas, and hands-on activities. As digital learning has become more prominent in recent years, many schools have reduced their use of printed classroom materials in an effort to save costs. Less photocopying, fewer workbooks, and fewer paper resources may appear efficient on a budget sheet, but education is not an area where cutting corners pays off. When students lack the physical materials that help them practice, review, and engage with lessons, the long-term costs can be far greater. Savings achieved today through reduced resources can translate into weaker learning outcomes tomorrow. This is where this conversation needs to expand. If Education Minister Paul Calandra and Premier Doug Ford are serious about supporting classrooms, then they should also invest in bringing more learning back off screen. Research and classroom experience increasingly suggests that students often retain information better when they write notes by hand, complete worksheets, and interact with printed materials rather than passively viewing information on screens. That leads to another important piece of the puzzle: homework and take-home learning materials. Over the past decade, many schools have reduced traditional worksheets and paper assignments sent home. Instead, work often is posted online or completed through digital platforms. While convenient, this approach can create barriers for families who want to support their children's learning but may struggle to navigate multiple online systems. Sending worksheets, reading materials, and practice exercises at home provides families with a clear, tangible way to stay engaged in their child's education. A piece of paper in a backpack is still one of the simplest and most effective communication tools between schools and parents. If Ontario wants to strengthen learning outcomes, it should pair this new classroom funding with larger investments in supply budgets across the education system. Schools should have the resource to provide paper, printing, workbooks, and other everyday materials without rationing them. By increasing supply funding and re-embracing paper-based learning alongside digital tools, Ontario can give classrooms what they truly need, not just to get by, but to thrive. Letters to the editor. The public deserves to know what happened. Regarding Niagara Region Chair resigns over Hitler Mein Kampf controversy. This was from March 12th. The resignation of Niagara Region Chair Bob Gale over the ownership of a book that can be found in many public libraries should alarm anyone who values transparency and democratic accountability. When an elected official is seemingly forced to step down, the public deserves clear facts and a fair process. Instead, residents of Niagara have been left with questions and very few answers. Was there an actual violation of law or ethics, or was this simply the result of political pressure and public outrage? If Gale broke a rule, then the rule should be identified and the evidence presented. If not, then we must ask who demanded his resignation and why. Public office should not be governed by intimidation or pressure campaigns. Elected officials answer to the voters, not to activists, social media mobs, or political operatives working behind the scenes. Niagara residents deserve to know exactly what happened here and who is responsible for this outcome. If resignations can be demanded without transparency or due process, then public trust in government will continue to erode. The public deserves answers. That's from Erica Fernay from Welland. Where is Ford's response? Regarding white nationalist activity monitored in Niagara, March 10th, and Niagara Region Chair resigns over the Hitler Mein Kampf controversy on March 12th. The growing presence of hate in Niagara is disturbing, but with recent reporting, the provincially appointed Niagara Region Chair Bob Gale possesses a copy of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, signed by the most notorious mass murderer in history. How can we be surprised? His resignation was the least that could be expected. He demonstrates a shocking level of hubris with his unapologetic statement, defending his actions as a sound investment in historical artifacts and signatures, as if it is more palatable to lump the name of a genocidal madman in with the likes of John Brown, George Washington, and Winston Churchill. Why is Premier Doug Ford not disavowing himself for supporting this appointment? He must own his egregious error in judgment for selecting or approving this person to be Niagara's top politician. This is not a one-off, as the Premier previously appointed this same individual to the top post at Niagara Parks Commission. I wait with bated breath for the announcement from Toronto. This is from Roger Demers in Welland. The next chair, regarding the same subject, regional chair's resignation over Hitler book has Ford government reviewing its options. Now that the short-lived Bob Gale regime is gone, I wonder if Ontario Premier Doug Ford will do the right thing and allow the democratically elected members of Niagara Region Council to elect the next chair, as was the custom in the past. What are the odds? That's from Richard Murray of Niagara Falls. Mideast War. Carney meets Keir Starmer as the war disrupts shipping routes. Prime Minister Mark Carney and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed during a meeting in London on Monday that safe passage must be restored through the Strait of Hormuz. Their discussion came after U.S. President Donald Trump issued a public demand for other countries to send warships to keep the strait open. It's only appropriate that people who are the beneficiaries of the strait will help make sure that nothing bad happens there. If there's no response, or if it's a negative response, I think it will be very bad for the future of NATO, Trump said in an interview with the Financial Times. About one-fifth of the world's oil normally ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea via the Gulf of Oman. You're currently listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Iran has been attacking ships passing through the strait since the U.S. and Israel launched a surprise attack on Iran at the end of February. Iran has also said that it will allow passage of some ships as long as they don't belong to the U.S. or its allies. The war has driven up the global price of oil, which is expected to lead to higher inflation, adding to the affordability crisis in Canada and the United States. Carney and Starmer met at 10 Downing Street on Monday morning. A readout of the meeting from Carney's office mentioned only that the two leaders discussed the situation in the Middle East and condemned Iran's missile and drone attacks on civilians and energy infrastructure. A readout from Downing Street said the two leaders agreed on the need for stability and the protection of international shipping routes. Bill Blair, Canada's High Commissioner to the UK, said ahead of the meeting that Canada supports efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but is not getting directly involved in the conflict. The UK is considering sending naval assets to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I think it's very important that the two prime ministers have an opportunity to discuss each of our collective approaches, Blair told reporters late Sunday. Trump has called on countries affected by the disruption in the strait, specifically the UK, China, France, Japan, and South Korea, to send ships and other military assets to help reopen it. Starmer told a news conference following his meeting with Carney on Monday that the Strait of Hormuz must be reopened, but it will not be a simple task. He added that the UK is working with its allies, including European partners, to come up with a viable plan to reopen the strait as quickly as possible. He said he discussed this plan with Trump on Sunday. The Australian government says it won't send a warship to keep the strait open to international shipping. Australia's Transport Minister, Catherine King, told Australian Broadcasting Corporation on Monday that she was not aware of Australia receiving such a request from the United States. We won't be sending a ship to the Strait of Hormuz. We know how incredibly important that is, but that's not something that we've been asked or that we're contributing to, King said. At the beginning of Monday's meeting, Starmer wished Carney a happy 61st birthday, which he was celebrating on Monday. The leaders commended each other over their support for Ukraine in its war against Russia and discussed the importance of applying their shared values to other global issues. Inflation cooled in February before oil price shock. Inflation was showing signs of easing in February, but economists warn price relief will be short-lived as the war in the Middle East fuels surging energy costs. Statistics Canada said Monday that February's inflation reading came in at 1.8% year over year, which is a half a percentage point lower than January's figures and just under economists' expectations for the month. The main factor driving the headline number lower was the end of last year's tax holiday, which saw the federal sales tax taken off a variety of household staples, gifts, and dining out for a 2-month period ending mid-February 2025. Lower prices from the tax break were only in effect for half of February last year, compared with all of January, making the annual inflation calculation somewhat better last month. BMO senior economist Robert Kapchik said that the mechanical easing in inflation last month doesn't really matter to analysts trying to track long-term trends in prices. The bigger picture is what's actually happening beyond. Obviously, changes in tax policy and then going forward over the next 6 to 12 months, given what's happening geopolitically, he said. StatCan said the cost of gasoline started to creep higher at the end of February in the lead up to the war in the Middle East, which has pushed prices at the pump higher. Iran has responded to the United States and Israel's bombing campaign by blocking the Strait of Hormuz, bottlenecking a critical channel for global oil supply. TD senior economist Leslie Preston said in a note to clients Monday that she expects the headline inflation figure will rise to around 3% in the months ahead, thanks to the oil price shock. Kapchik said the headline inflation figure is unquestionably going higher starting in March because gas represents such a large share of Staten's consumer basket. But he also warned those factors will start to feed into transportation costs for food, depending on how long the conflict and the ensuing oil price shock last. That's not an impact you see right away, but the longer these higher oil prices persist, the more it squeezes margins, the more that price pressure tends to get passed on, he said. StatCon reported that food inflation moderated to 5.4% in February, down from 7.3% in January. But Kapchik said he expects food inflation will continue to be a main point in 2026, however. The Middle East war, combined with a relatively weak Canadian dollar, will keep pressures firm at the grocery store this year, he warned. The Bank of Canada will be carefully analyzing the latest price figures as the central bank prepares for an interest rate decision on Wednesday. The central bank held its benchmark rate steady at 2.25% in January, and monetary policymakers signaled at the time that they were satisfied with where the policy rate stood. The February inflation report comes after a weak jobs report from StatCon on Friday showed a loss of 84,000 jobs last month. Ford urges legalizing pepper spray for use in self-defense. The federal government should legalize the use of pepper spray for self-defense purposes, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said Monday in one of several justice-themed points of contention that he raised at a press conference. Speaking in Brockville at an announcement about a request for qualifications to build a new jail, Ford said that DNA samples should be collected at the time of arrest for sexual offenses. Ottawa should stop dilly-dallying on bail reform. He will take care of the problem of retail theft, and bail hearings should be live-streamed. We also need to make sure that we're putting the rights of victims ahead of criminals, he said. You always hear about charter this, charter that, charter rights for criminals. How about the charter rights for the victims once and for all? I think I'll keel over if I ever hear one of the judges out there say that they're going to have charter rights for the victims that carry these crimes for a lifetime. Ontario's Attorney General wrote to Federal Justice Minister Sean Fraser over the weekend asking for criminal code changes, including allowing people to carry and use pepper spray for self-defense. In response, a spokesperson for Fraser issued a brief statement pointing to various justice system reforms that the government has made. We will continue to work with all levels of government to keep our community safe and ensure the justice system treats victims and survivors with dignity. Waleed Danabayaba wrote, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police said that they were not consulted on the pepper spray proposal, but are now having discussions with policymakers. More than half of the country is in path of extreme weather. Chaotic weather, from surprising heat in California to damaging winds around Washington, D.C., put over half the U.S. population in the path of extreme conditions on Monday. Storms across the nation's eastern half forced airlines to cancel more than 4,000 flights nationwide Monday, and many schools closed early in the mid-Atlantic states, while high winds and tornadoes were in the forecast for the evening. Blizzards buried parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, while torrential rains flooded homes and washed out roads in Hawaii. In Washington, the House of Representatives postponed votes because of difficulty traveling with inclement weather, and federal agencies told workers to go home early. Airport delays and cancellations piled up Monday in some of the nation's largest airports, including those in New York, Chicago, and Atlanta. The private weather service, AccuWeather, calculated that more than 200 million people were under threat Monday of some kind of dangerous weather. Those ranged from extreme heat and wildfire advisories to flood and freeze watches from the National Weather Service. The storm system that drops snow by the foot in the Midwest is barreling toward the East Coast, with dangerously high winds and potential for producing strong and long-track tornadoes, the Weather Service warned on Monday. Wind is the primary threat, but within any of these areas of strong wind, there could be some embedded tornadoes and even the potential for a tornado to develop ahead of the line, said Evan Bentley, a meteorologist with the Weather Service. The biggest threat stretched from Maryland to the upper edge of South Carolina. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein urged residents to enable emergency alerts on their phones ahead of expected gusts topping 112 kilometers per hour. Blizzard conditions continued in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes on Monday after the storm walloped parts of Wisconsin and Michigan with several centimeters of snow. Since Saturday, nearly 61 centimeters had fallen in the northern Wisconsin town of Mountain. Another round of snow and gusts on Monday could bring large amounts of snow across Michigan's upper peninsula. And finally, Trump's top aide has cancer. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles has been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer, but will continue working during her treatments, U.S. President Donald Trump said in a social media post on Monday. Trump said that Wiles' prognosis is excellent and described her as one of the strongest people that I know. He said Wiles plans to begin treatment immediately, but made no suggestion that she was pulling back on her work as one of his closest advisors. Wiles, who's 68 years old, is a long-time Trump ally who rose from his campaign co-chair to his closest advisor and counsel. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 17th issue of the Niagara Falls Review. We read from the Niagara Falls Review every Sunday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been Jeff Shapiro. Thank you for listening.